This meeting and all other meetings of this committee are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, so the citizenry may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting. Roll call.
Appleby.
Here.
Gunderson.
Here.
Nadowski.
Here.
Second on the list is to approve the minutes from our August 5th, 2015 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the August 5th, 2015 meeting.
Go ahead and second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is citizens' appearance. There's nobody. And fourth is discussion and possible action on vicious animal ordinance revisions.
You probably want to have, just a quick review if you'd like on maybe what the main difference is between the two ordinances. You have gone through, and I believe it's the first few pages are the first ordinance that was the result of the discussion from last November, December. And again, this had started with a pit bull owner in town had requested that pit bulls be allowed in the city, because right now your ordinance specifically outlaws or excludes people from being able to own them if they weren't grandfathered in like in 2010, 2009 or something like that. And so the deal here really is what we're looking at is the vicious animal ordinance. The first couple pages are the first proposal for an ordinance change. Then the second, and you'll maybe have to check on, I don't have the number handy, but the second half of the packet is a second ordinance, which was the result of the review of the first ordinance, where we made some changes on licensing and potentially requiring photos so that we could help to identify dogs, what the breeds are. And then the other part of the ordinance was to, I think perhaps allow pit bulls and vicious animals to be kept in the city as long as there was like an insurance provision that they carried $50,000 worth of insurance. And that's pretty much where we're at. You have two proposals for two different ordinances in front of you, and it's really just a matter of which one do you prefer moving forward with.
Okay.
Well, can I speak before we start heavy into this? So I started with this whole thing trying to get the pit bulls off and just trying to get it to the vicious animals. And then in our August meeting, we talked about bringing back and just saying that pit bulls were welcome, but they had to follow these certain rules. And we talked about licensing and having photo ID. Well, since then, I have done my own homework and have talked to pet owners inside the city limits, and I have done more research as in looking at what city of Weyauwega, city of Appleton, and the city of Wausau on how they word everything and how they do it. The ordinance that Jim gave us in the beginning in August was a complete copy of what Weyauwega does, and some of the city residents there like it. They've never had any problems with it. It's pretty cut forward. If you have a vicious animal, you're responsible for it, so forth and on. I checked with insurances. All dogs can be insured. It's just a matter of finding that proper insurance company that will cover, and of course they have their own rules and regulations on that. I feel very strongly that I would like to go to the opposed one that or not the opposed, but the first ordinance that Jim did.
That's the one that's on page 16 and 26 of the packet?
I believe so.
Just to make sure that way Jim can follow along.
I gotta find
Yeah,
it.
you're on page 1 and 2. That's the first ordinance. The second ordinance then is page 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay. Just to make it easier to follow for everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yep.
It's very confusing.
I know, it is, and I tried to pull out the sheets I had, but everything's kind of scattered all over the point. I also looked at the dog licensing as well, and quite honestly, I think we're going well over what is asked or needed. I feel like we're just adding more work to the staff and to ourselves, having to redo and have pictures and all that required of the dog. We've never done it in the past. We've never had problems.
We've never allowed pit bulls in the past. We've never had problems.
Yeah, but we haven't had any problems with pit bulls.
We already shot a pit bull this year.
We do have a
one pit
pit
bull,
bull was
but I
shot
mean,
by
prior to
a
that, we haven't had
private
any,
citizen in the mobile home park.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
And that was never really, and that problem, I can't really justify on that, because I heard that that entity with what goes on in there is the owners of that mobile park's responsibility. Whether that's true or not, that's what somebody had told me that lived there. I don't know.
it's still a city, or it's a city property.
The
You
ordinance
still,
would still apply.
still applies to them.
But it's one pit bull,
Is
and
there any other instances that we know of in the past 5-10 years?
I'll tell you one, not in the city limits, but my boss, who lives in Iola, whose neighbor has a pit bull, that dog broke its leash, entered her yard, picked her terrier up by the face, and it took 4 adult men to pull that dog off. And if you want to talk to Laura, see, I would actually, the more I read about pit bulls, the more I look at the stuff, the more I talk to people, I go the opposite way. I prefer to keep it exactly as it is right now and not allow those dogs in the city limits at all. When you look at the number of deaths in the last 10 years, pit bulls themselves account for 62% of them. If you throw pit bulls and Rottweilers in there, it's 74%. Okay? An animal is an animal.
Yeah.
I have a foxhound. When I take her on a walk, her nose never leaves the ground. She can't hunt. She's afraid of everything, but it's in her blood. I was just talking to Brian Williams before I came in the back of the restaurant. He's got a 1.5-year-old yellow lab. Never hunted, never been taught. He opened the door up this morning. That dog went straight to the water and retrieved a duck that somebody else had shot. It's in the blood. It's what they're meant for.
I guess here's my only concern with that idea is that if you single out just the pit bull and pit bull similar breeds, you have the same propensity for German shepherds, for chows,
You
for
absolutely
any dog
have
that's
any
a
animal,
defensive
cat, dog, no matter what it is, has that potential. The only difference is their jaw and the way what they were bred for. When a pit bull locks on, it's locked on for life. It's not going to release. It's not meant to release. It's the way its bone structure is. My other thing is that an ordinance is a law. I am dead set against changing it for a fistful of people. It's meant to be for the good of the entire city, not a couple people. I am tired of us changing laws to fit a few.
well, and the people, and this was just the guy that brought it up, he has now
Left the city.
left the city and the pit bull's gone, but we still have a number of people that have pit bulls in the city that are well taken care of and are very good dogs. And I don't think that we should punish them because they are taking care of their dogs. For the most part, I think our community, our town does
I
a good
haven't
job
talked
with
to a
it.
single person yet when I walked up and down my neighborhood that wanted pit bulls in the city.
And see, I'm all for it. I've helped take care of a pit bull, and she is the most sweetest little thing you'd ever want to see. But any animal at any time can turn, not just a pit bull.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Like I said, but when they latch on for good. And that they're raised and they are bred for exactly what they do. And they're good at what they do.
I guess I don't disagree with what they're bred for, but I'm trying to see the differentiation, and I understand you're saying the bone structure is, but there's other dogs that are similar, have similar tendencies, or have been accounted for in similar ways. So I guess
Not even the
if we're
military
doing
will
it
let a
with-
pit bull on its basis.
Yes.
No, they restrict them.
Well, I know they won't. I'm saying yes. I know
Oh, okay,
that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but
so,
and I also know why, because I had a friend that had a pit bull, and they would, make sure that it was nice and strong. Now it was well behaved and very nice, but just that idea is what drove people to be against it in the military setting, because military guys aren't really that scared of, say, fighting or something like that, so they may have a propensity to do something like that.
Let me
May.
let me just jump in real quick, and I know, Keith, there was a meeting we had that you were excused for, but
Yep.
Jim had mentioned, as it relates to the law, because we only prohibit pit bulls right now. Jim, can you comment a little bit on the specific breeds that have been upheld through, ordinances that restrict, I believe, was it Rottweilers, pit bulls,
the
and then...
Rottweiler, pit bull, and I think in one instance German Shepherds were also included. That wasn't in our state. In our state, it's only been pit bulls, but the rationale that was used was pretty similar to what Nick was saying. The notion that they were bred to be a fighting breed, and that they do have a reputation. Just seeing them, to some people, some people get afraid just seeing them. The notion that you could probably include Rottweilers in that list has been supported by a few other states. So you're probably in good shape to put a Rottweiler in the ordinance too if you wanted to. But the one that has in particular been upheld in Wisconsin is regulating pit bulls.
Okay. One other question, just because I wasn't involved with all of this, it would be another way to look at this, and sorry if I'm throwing a monkey wrench in people's plans, but it's just because I haven't been here for all of it. Any dog that would be in the city that gets loose that's not been trained has a chance to do something that's not friendly, right? And whether it's a long-lasting bite or multiple bites or whatever, it can still do the same damage or multiple damage to somebody. Has there been any talk about requiring obedience documents of obedience training or anything like that prior to registration for something like this?
And I bring up the...
Just to make sure that if that's the concern, well, you can make sure that, one, they can have the type of breeds they want, but we can also ensure that they're meeting the proper training and that owner is, if there's something concerned with it, that owner is taking the steps necessary to ensure that isn't what their dog is, because every dog's got a different temperament.
Usually, and the only reason I bring that other item up for clarification is that the reason why you would only have certain breeds is because legally it's been upheld, or legally you can do that. And I would almost defer to Jim to say, if you would have to look at, I'm not suggesting you do, but if you had to look at some kind of an obedience requirement or training, you'd have to find out if you can legally even have that as an ordinance.
I just don't know if it's even been discussed, but I'm
I don't
saying
think it
because
has here, but
I mean, I've met many nice and bad of any breed.
Absolutely.
And I also know that when I've had puppies, if they went through obedience training and things like that, they're also the best dogs I've ever had. And I didn't have to do much after that because they were already in the state where they understood what was played and everything like that. So to me, it was more just a question, has that been discussed at this point? Because I don't like the idea of excluding certain animals just because I know that, yes, though they may have a propensity towards it, I also have met many that have been perfect. And I can say that with a lot of different breeds. So I'd rather not exclude them, but there is ways to safeguard it maybe without excluding them. Legally, I don't know.
and really what we're...
Legally, if what you're talking about, Keith, is a part of your licensing being that they have to go through obedience training, you probably could require that as part of your licensing of all dogs and apply it equally.
So it'd have to be all dogs, though, if we did that.
Yeah, I don't think you would be in a position right now. You don't do that with pit bulls, but you could. You could require pit bulls go through obedience.
Could you do that with a specific breed then?
What's that?
Could you do it with specific breeds?
That specific breed. That's the only one I would suggest you could do it with.
Okay, so like Rottweilers and other ones wouldn't be in the
You
mix.
might be able to argue Rottweiler too, but if we want to be safe, you better stick with pit bull.
And just to jump in again, the frame of this discussion is how do we regulate and prevent vicious dogs and animal bites and bad things that happen there. And the way we've done it in the past with the current ordinance is you will never have a vicious animal attack by a pit bull because you don't allow pit bulls to be here.
Yep.
Right.
And then the question is, how do you regulate that? And how, the reason why we brought it up was because Miss Appleby had questioned, well, what if we allow pit bulls, but my understanding was never that you wanted to allow for vicious dogs. You were just looking at pit bulls, good pit bulls.
Yeah.
Which sort of, might get a little bit of a raw deal just by the nature of the ordinance we have.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
again, you avoid vicious dogs, vicious pit bulls by not even allowing them to be here.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, I like the definition of a vicious dog on the page. Hold on, 1.6, I believe it is. I think it's fitting. Basically, any animal that has, according to public records, been found by court to have bitten, injured, or assaulted any person while on the premises of the animal's owner, unless the decision contains finding a bite or assault was due to provocation. Any animal owner has pled no contest guilty to a charge that has animal biting, assaulting, injuring a person. Any animal that has been declared a nuisance, and owner who has been convicted of any of the three below, and then there's a couple other items. And so that shows, I guess, of a dog owner who either doesn't control or doesn't train, or that dog may have a propensity to bites and things like that. But then, if pit bulls is the main concern, that's the holdup here, obedience training to me would be a way that I think we could safeguard.
I don't believe obedience school. I'm not them objected to it. My dog has been through obedience school. I don't think that's going to stop anything. But if you like that right there says you have to wait till the animal attacks before you require insurance. You have to wait for a dog, another dog, a child, a person to be viciously attacked before you do anything. So I say at the least, if you have an animal that is known to do this, I say get the insurance first then.
How do you define that?
That'd be the second one, was that if you're going to license a pit bull, you have to show proof of insurance.
No, I'm just saying with any dog, how would you? I
Proof of
guess,
insurance?
no, how would you define? I guess you're saying that if they've ever shown a propensity to it, but how would you know that?
I didn't say
that's
that.
the issue.
That's the issue.
Is how do you know they're vicious or not?
Yeah.
That's really what the issue is with all of
Right.
this discussion.
So if you go to the second one, where I propose that if you have a pit bull, then to license it, you must show proof of insurance, $50,000.
But then for any other dog, we're waiting for them to bite, as you said.
As I said, because 62% of deaths from dogs are from pit bulls. They have a tendency to latch on. Right, they are known to be vicious dogs. We have, I believe it's 43 cities in the state that ban them. There are whole states that do regulate them. They have a history.
Yeah, I understand that.
But I don't know why we need to punish people who already have pit bulls that are decent, and for the most part everybody takes care. I mean, we have a few here and there, but it's not.
So if it was your
Everything.
child with a few here or there, you would just blow it off?
No, I wouldn't blow it off, but then that's why we have the ordinance where, if somebody bites, they have to show proof of insurance.
If
or
somebody
I'm gonna
bites.
sue 'em. If I'm gonna sue, then I would sue them for it. But I don't, I
So
don't
now-
know, I just,
Doesn't homeowners insurance cover this
Ours do.
normally
No.
when they do their inspection?
And if you go on some of the pit bull sites, they recommend that you lie to the insurance agent about the breed of your dog, which I found amusing.
So is there a way for them just to make sure that the homeowner's insurance is aware? Maybe not put a specific amount on it? You know what I
The
mean?
only way you would really, the only way we'd be able to regulate that or require that is we would have to have them still have proof of insurance somehow. So either their homeowner says, yes, we cover it, or they'd have a policy
I'm just,
that says,
is there like, I don't know how that works, if they have to do like a declaration to their homeowner's insurance or something like that. I'm not saying that we put a specific dollar amount on it, but if it's a declaration to their homeowner's insurance. I mean, don't you?
Ours,
I
we
don't
were
know.
asked if we had a dog, and we had to send in vet papers showing what breed it was.
And I know when I got insurance, they asked,
So,
you got dogs, what type of dogs, da da da, and that was all just to make sure that you have the right size insurance for what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And
Don't
that's
quote me on it. I'm not good with insurance.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
I try not to understand all
But
this. so
that's
much.
assuming that you're gonna tell your insurance agent you have a dog.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if there's a declaration that can be made, and then from that, it shows that the homeowner's insurance is aware of the fact that the dog's there. But then we're not putting a specific dollar amount on there that they have to get specific insurance for said animal or something like that.
But for them to say they're aware, your intent, I think, would be to make sure that they have coverage, right? So you,
Yes, and
Because otherwise
then
they-
it's really the insurance people are the ones that I'm sure have spent millions of dollars to study exactly what the liabilities are in different cases and the percentages and all that good fun stuff that I don't claim to know.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out different options to look at this because I can see that both you guys are set on the different things. So I'm trying to play the middleman and see if we can.
Well,
come
and
to
that's
a
why I
concession.
compromise
'Cause I
with
see
the
both.
insurance.
I see both of them that are I see both valid arguments, and I've seen good and bad dogs
Right.
all over. So
And that is why I compromise with the insurance, knowing full well that the two insurance agents in town told me they wouldn't write insurance on pit bulls. They said no.
yeah, so you made a compromise knowing that they wouldn't be
Well,
able to do it.
but you're
in other
not,
words.
you don't have, you can get insurance anywhere. I have USAA,
Yeah, so do I.
And I have West Bend Mutual.
so that, but I'm just saying, like, when I
Yeah.
did that, but I go
I'm
talk to
sure a
agents, they say
smaller
no.
insurance
We
agent
don't,
in
we
town
won't
probably
even
isn't gonna
want, they don't wanna
touch
deal
it.
with them, right?
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because there's liability.
Because there's liability.
If the owner isn't taking care of the dog, in any case, there's liability. In some, there's a percentage higher. Yes, I agree.
That should send up red flags.
I have seen as many good ones too.
And we've only had that one incident where that pit bull was shot, and we don't know what other problems those people had had with that, and we haven't had any other problems with the pit bulls.
Because they're
except
not
for that
supposed to
one.
be in town.
But we've never followed the ordinances for the last.
Okay, so now you just brought up a different problem
Well,
of a
we have all these,
non-enforcement.
yeah, we have all these pit bulls in town, but yet we have this ordinance, and we keep saying about the pit bulls, but yet none of our ordinances have been followed, and that's what we're trying to get accomplished.
Right.
And we had somebody point out to us this, and so now we're trying to make it so it's better for everybody. And I feel very strongly that we would be the only city, we are the only city that has that in Weyauwega County right now.
But there are 42 other cities in the state that regulate it, and there's whole states that regulate them, and the military.
But I don't know.
We're
that
not
we
the only
should-
ones. We're not
But
the
I'm
only
not
people.
looking at it that way. I'm looking at
I
us
look
as a
at-
county.
I look at us as a whole. I look at the city as a whole, and I take everything into account. I don't look at just a few people. I feel like I'm here to represent everybody, not just the fistful.
Well, that's my purpose too. And what I looked at it as a county-wide. I didn't sit and look at every state and every
Listen.
county in Wisconsin about it. I just looked at what was in our general area and what was going on. And I feel that we're labeling dogs. Are we gonna start labeling other things too in our city too? I mean, that's the next thing that could come up.
I haven't found a single person that wants it changed. When I walk up and down the street and I ask people, they no, they don't want it changed. They didn't want chickens and they don't want pit bulls.
Well, for your handful of people that you've talked to, I've had just the opposite. So I've talked to the people who own pit bulls here in the city.
But
There's
if
been
you
a-
talk to people that own pit bulls, yes, they're going to say they want pit bulls.
Well,
If
not-
you talk to people with loud trucks, they're going to say they want loud trucks.
I just asked them how they felt about it, and they love their dogs. They say they take care of them. They pick up after them. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's right.
I don't think you can ask a person how they. I mean, I've never known anybody to say they don't like their dog.
Yeah.
I've known a few to say they don't like their kids, but
Well, I had a dog I didn't like, and we got rid of him. And
Yeah.
he probably had some mix of whatever. He was a weirdo and we got rid of him. I didn't like him at all.
Yeah.
And people are going to be honest with you for the most part. I mean, you would like to believe that. I mean, that's why we're in our community talking to our people that live here.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problems with pit bulls, and actually we were contemplating adopting one for somebody that we knew were moving a while back, and that's when I first heard about this, and this was probably 2 years ago, just because it was a sweetheart. You know, I have no fear of them, I guess. But I understand that there probably is people that have concern. That's why I'm, in between, and I'd like to see some type of compromise that would be feasible, for everybody.
So how do we get that way, Jim?
That's why I was kind of touching on the obedience thing, because you have a vested owner in that case.
Well, that's how I felt about insurance. Anybody that truly loves their dog, that shouldn't be a problem to get that rider. If it's somebody that has the dog for the right reasons, it won't be an issue. If it's somebody that has the dog because they want it to raise it for other reasons, they won't get the insurance. That's why I compromise with the insurance.
Yeah.
Because that's just it. If you're a good dog, if you're a responsible dog owner, it won't be a problem.
Anybody know what the cost of the insurance is for that coverage for a pit bull? Anybody get a quote on that?
No, the only thing I know is that we talked to, or Nick maybe talked to the two insurance brokers in town, and they both said they wouldn't, or two of them in town, they said they wouldn't
Yeah.
offer coverage. So right there, we wouldn't have an idea on it, but
Yeah, I guess that'd be the one question that would hold me up there. Because, I mean, if it's ridiculous, then I still would go the obedience way. If it was reasonable, I mean, granted, it's probably going to be more than obedience. I'd be more, I guess, agreeable with it. If it's just something that makes it so that you can't have pit bulls in town, well, then we're not changing anything, we're not doing anything anyway, so then what's the purpose of even talking about it? I guess, is the way I'm looking at it. So, I'm up in the air just because of the fact that, yes, I don't have a problem with pit bulls, but I understand how people could have fears of them because of the fact that the percentage of stuff. So, I don't mind certain requirements, but I don't want to make it prohibitive so it's just unreasonable to own one either.
So, with your friends that have pit bulls, did they know it was illegal?
I never even asked them that question.
Are they licensed?
I believe so.
They're licensed.
I believe so.
Our
They have tags
licenses ask what breed you have.
on. I believe so.
Right, Patrick?
yeah, I think off the top of my head, just because this has been a topic since last November, if there would have been people coming in, I'm not saying there were or there weren't, like came in and licensed pit bulls, I'm assuming I would have been made aware of it if somebody came to the counter and said, hey, I want to license my pit bull. And I say that because somebody just moved to town in the last week, came to the office, has had two pit bulls in her car and said, I'd like to license my dogs, has two pit bulls, and I was notified and they said, what do we do about this? So I'm assuming that if we had a license early in the year for a pit bull, somebody would have said, hey, what are we doing with it? But that being said, I'm not gonna rule it out that nobody has licensed a pit bull in town either. I'll have to check.
Okay.
But we do have a provision that says if you've been licensed continuously
Right.
since
Correct.
09, 2010, then you can still have them,
Right.
but.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for you. I guess I'd have to
Yeah.
check on how many pit bulls are licensed, but I'm assuming it's very few or maybe none.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know, do you want to table this till we can get some more information? One, on some of that stuff, and then I guess I'm kind of curious on if you're gonna do it, what is the cost? I mean, is it ridiculous where we're just blatantly saying no? Because I don't know that I like that so much, but I do agree that there's people with concern, and we should take that into account.
If you don't mind me asking, if you don't wanna act tonight, and if you want more information, just make sure that you specify what it is that you would like us to get.
So
Bring back to
my,
you.
my question would be, is that if we went to, say, some of the more major insurance companies and said, okay, I have a house of $90,000 or whatever it is, maybe a replacement value of $250, and what would be the difference of that just in general, and then if you plug this on there, and then how much is that changing my premiums and whatnot? Or is it just something that you can't do? I'd be curious what the answer is, because I think that would tell us a lot to what we're trying to do here, or what you guys are looking at here. And I think the idea is that you want to make it available for the good owners, or you guys are open to the thought of making it open, for the good owners that have pit bulls. You see good pit bulls, but we're also trying to protect from the people that can't take or don't take care of their dog, I guess. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you, Nick?
Sure.
And I think then that's hopefully a compromise. We can come to a compromise that everybody can agree to and feel good about, and then we safeguard the people with concerns, but yet we also help out the people that love their pits.
When we look at the insurance, how much does it cost? Are we looking at the $50,000, which is what's outlined in that second ordinance?
I wouldn't say the dollar amount of coverage, but what it would take for the homeowner's insurance to cover it, and then I guess, okay, the second question would be what level of coverage is that?
Okay. I'll keep in mind the $50,000.
You know what I mean?
But yeah.
So that way we're not, if we put a predetermined amount on it, they might already have a cookie cutter answer for that. So I'd like to see what they say. Does that make sense
It does.
then?
And I can actually probably call my insurance company guy and get a breakdown of all of that. And I'll just call him tomorrow and ask him to do
Yeah,
it.
and I guess if we can get just a sample of a couple, just so we're not, because we already saw in town that it was, one answer, and so let's just get a couple samplings, and then we can hopefully feel good about the answer and all come to a agreement where nobody's feeling like they're getting slighted, and we can go on our merry ways.
Our merry ways.
Anyways.
All right,
So does that work? Then we'll just table it and have you look up for the stuff for.
yeah.
If you could, do you wanna maybe make a motion that says hold until next meeting?
Yeah, I'll
And
make
seek
a
this
motion
information?
to hold this till next meeting, and I would like a sampling of no less than 3, I guess, major insurance companies, and the difference that it would be for them to insure a household with a pit bull. No determined amount, but then also the question of what amount of coverage is attributed to the pit bull. So is it the personal injury of 25,000, 50,000, or what is that, I guess? Or does it just fall under the umbrella of the house?
We have a motion to hold and then get that.
That was a
extra
lot of information. But does that make sense though?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
I just want to make sure it's clear so we can hopefully
Yep.
get to resolution on this then.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on. Discussion on city ethics code and ordinance chapter 47.
So you have just real quick before we kick it to Jim, you have the draft
Mhm.
ethics ordinance. Basically what we've looked at, and I believe this committee has found that the existing ethics code in our ordinances just has to go and it has to be replaced. And what we talked about was probably scrapping it entirely and starting over. And what Attorney Kelly was asked to do and what he's done is provide a draft ethics code that we could plug in hopefully today or soon. And then if you need to make changes or additions to it, such as conduct in meetings or whatever, Attorney Kelly will get into that. Potentially we could review that later, but the key I'm hoping is that the longer we go with our current ordinance, we've kind of determined that that's not a very good ethics code, so the quicker we can maybe dispose of that and replace it with something that is suitable, that would be my preference.
Yep.
And then Attorney Kelly, is that gonna go line by line to the draft? but probably just hit on some of the keys there. So, is that okay, Jim?
Sounds fine.
Could you, hey, one question, I read through it and it looked pretty good. Can you kind of point out when there's a major difference between what's current and what's the addition?
I'm sorry?
Is there a couple like key points that are additions or changes from our current that, you know, really sure up the ordinance from what it was to what it will be if we approve this?
Well,
Does that make sense?
Your ordinance actually had reference to a lot of this, but it doesn't really spell it out.
Okay.
There's reference, for example, the reference to the statutes that we have in this proposal. Where is it here? At sub 3 of the first section.
Okay.
There's Wisconsin statutes. Your current code has those same provisions in there. I know I added one though. I think that here's the tool.
I mean, we can go over it.
There's a reference to open meetings law.
Okay.
So we'd update that a little bit. That's one kind of subtle change. And let's see, what else do we have that's clear? A lot of it is simply putting it in words. Like I said, some of your code simply doesn't go into or goes in too far to regulating conduct, whereas this is kind of directed to a little bit more directed to the point. I think does a pretty good job of actually explaining what conduct is going to be prohibited. This came from a bunch of lay people spending a lot of time trying to figure out how they wanted to say what's in the statutes, essentially.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to say here's exactly what's different.
No, I mean, when I read through it, I thought it had enough detail to be effective. I haven't read through the whole older one, so that's why I was curious what all the changes were. But, I mean, when I read through it,
I'll tell you, Keith, the
seemed
main
pretty thorough.
thing about the old one that I had a little trouble with and wanted to see, and I think Patrick does too,
Yeah.
was the provisions you had, what was it called? The responsibilities of public office.
Okay.
Essentially, it's a code of conduct. There's that big fight in Green Bay right now over regulating the conduct of board members and council members when they're in meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be troublesome. And your code even went further.
so in other words, require a civil conversation?
Well, like our code said.
It was, yours went a little beyond that.
Yeah.
You can even make derogatory remarks in or out of council meetings about the member of council.
Oh, wow.
And ours
In
said
other words, if you didn't like
yeah.
one of your fellow council members, you couldn't say anything about it.
Right.
Or you
right.
could be held
If you
accountable.
showed up
Or
late,
out.
you had to be there
Or
on
you
time.
You certainly can't say that he's not honest in or out of council.
It was strange.
If you didn't read your packet,
That was ethical
You
violation.
had to read your packet. There were a number of things in
You
here
talk
that
too
So
much.
I do agree with some of those ideas, but I think that's the responsibility of the people that are electing those folks to see that and then make changes if they deem it necessary. Just because somebody likes to talk shouldn't be a disqualifying factor.
Patrick would be in so much trouble.
It would have
Well,
violation.
that's exactly right. I mean, that's really a judgment that the electorate should be making some of this stuff.
Yep.
And not to mention, how do you enforce it? Why do you have something in a code that's supposed to be an enforceable code that you're not going to be able to enforce?
Yeah. It looked like there was clear requirements and violations and whatnot, and action against those violations if they're there. So I mean, it made sense to me.
And then basically, as to what's in here, a lot of it is in your current code. This is just a little more concise. The dedicated service provision, you have a provision very similar to this in your code right now. This one's a little shorter than the one that's in your code right now, and that's you can't use your position for financial gain, and you can't exceed your authority. Then there's a fair and equal treatment provision. Again, I think I might have even taken part of this one right out of your code. Obligation to citizens, no official or agent shall grant special consideration, treatment, or advantage to any citizen beyond what someone else can get.
Yep.
Nice, straightforward provision, a little more concise than some of you see. Conflict of interest, again, similar to what you had in your code before.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit, maybe a little more description, because I took some of the stuff out of the statutes. We took some of the stuff out of the statutes, talking about what a direct and indirect influence is. Participation in contracts in the city, just some guidance on what you want to do to keep out of trouble. Because
Yep.
you shouldn't be dealing with contracts that you have an interest in. You should be voting on them already. Yeah. Disclosure, when you can deal on something that you might have a peripheral interest in, there's a provision on that. And being contributions, probably the biggest difference is a very detailed description of the ethics board and how it works. That's probably the biggest change you see in this ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
Goes through and it talks about how you create the ethics board, that's fine. Want to do that, we do that now.
I think it says the makeup too, right?
Excuse me?
It says the makeup as well. Who makes up the ethics board as well, I believe.
Right.
Yep. Okay, yeah.
And then there's the filing, and then when part 11, starting with the filing of a verified complaint, that really is a lot more detailed than what you used to have. And this spells out a procedure that would go through if somebody was accused of an ethics code violation and what would be required. And talks about then the hearing process, how it's done, sets out some basic things like amount of time that you're going to have the hearing. Again, all of this was really hashed out by a bunch of by an ethics board that was just sitting down and they spent months doing it, figuring out what they thought was fair. And I think they did a pretty good job, frankly.
Yeah, it looks good.
Then another thing is penalties. This is a very clean penalty provision after it's a result of a fair amount of research, actually. Talking about what you really can do for sure to council members. And, informal censure, formal censure, and the fact that if it's bad enough, it can be grounds for removal, but you got to use Chapter 17. And also, that any of those penalties have to be imposed by the Common Council. It's not really the ethics board that imposes the penalties. They do all the legwork. They report to the council. The council makes the ultimate decision. Advisory opinions, everybody should know that they can ask me for an advisory opinion on an ethics issue that might come up. And that does provide them some protection. Those are confidential opinions. They're not shared except unless you want them, really. And then lastly, distribution of code provision. I don't think you have that in your current code. That basically makes it clear that we make sure that everybody who's working in government has a copy of this.
Yep.
So they know their rights and liabilities. And basically that's what this ordinance goes through. So I know it's kind of a quick review, but
The only question that I had after I read through it, and I'm sure it'll come up at council, so it'd be good for us to have the answer, is if we were to pass this on to the council and say it's approved by the council, is it effect from that point on, and then anything prior to that is not affected by that?
You're saying any actions or any
Yeah.
events before?
yeah, I would recommend that you do it perspective only. I mean, you can always argue that it backs up.
And I don't have a pull for it either way. I just want to know what, I'd rather have it be clear going to the council instead of a question. So in other words, if we were to make a motion for approving this, and it would go effective approval of the council, and from said date forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the way you should do it.
And
Okay.
one of the other
Obviously,
things
the
you can,
hearing provisions would be from that day forward anyhow.
Yeah, because I would rather just make it clear when it goes to council. That way we can answer that question before people are maybe get balled up on that. So
one thing you could add to is just to say, to the best of all of our knowledge, I don't believe there are any violations that have occurred
No.
that we're aware of, and, you know, maybe you put that out there too, to say a violation that would require the ethics board to review it, but at the same time, we don't have an ethics board right now, so,
Mm.
you know.
So, does anybody else have any other questions, I guess?
I don't do Nick.
No. My only thought on what you said, it would be, I mean, that, I agree with that if it was a council person bringing in on another council person. But if it was a citizen that felt that there was an ethics violation 2 months ago,
Mm.
I don't know if I would feel the same way.
But then what code, I guess, do you hold it
Well,
to?
you'd almost have to go, if the new one
I-
is effective on Monday, you'd
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
have to have it follow the old.
I know, it's, yeah, I just, that would be
That-
the only thing.
Yeah,
You know,
and I
I-
don't want them not to have the ability to do or bring up
Right.
concerns.
Right,
I just want to be clear on what it applies to.
Or maybe it applies to complaints filed after the 19th or something like that.
That would be the way to do it. And
That could
then
be-
what
Okay.
you would probably do is if there was a violation of something they didn't like, a citizen comes to complain, let's use that for an example. And they say 2 months ago, Nick did something that was clearly unethical under our ethics code.
Mhm.
And they point to something in the old code that he violated, the procedure that would apply would still be the new procedure.
Okay,
okay,
I think that's
And
clear
then,
as enough.
you
Yeah.
know, once the effective date comes, the substance of the law in the new law would start to apply.
Okay,
okay. That works.
so if I was to make a motion to send to council the city ethics code ordinance, chapter 47, that would have a, I'm trying to think how to word this, would basically be, would surpass the old code as of the approval, as of the date of approval from the council.
Right. I will take care of doing some effective date language to cover the intent we just talked about.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to get it in there right, but it's, I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's probably going to take a couple different paragraphs to do it, but yeah, we'll get it in there.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe you better do it.
I think what you probably, in your motion, you could probably recommend approval of this with,
So,
the
approval
city
of chapter
attorney to-
27 with, or 47 with the city's attorney's,
recommendation on effective date language.
recommendation on effective date language. There we go.
I knew that's what you were gonna say. So.
Yes,
Sorry.
that's what I was intending. Thought the intent was real clear.
Okay.
Do you have a motion?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Real
Okay.
good. I'll get that together for your next council meeting.
There are a couple things like when it talks about the makeup of the ethic board, it says that the members of the ethics board shall be appointed by the president
That's,
and confirmed by the board.
we'll just change it to
We
mayor.
change that to mayor, and I think in one other spot it referenced the village, just
And
to
that's-
make
Or
sure we're
Simple type.
That's where the
Yeah.
president
Okay.
language comes in, is because it's the
Yeah,
Right.
one
I'll make
that.
sure.
Right.
I thought I did a check, but you're right. The president and board,
right. Just
but I should have picked up.
to
Okay.
make sure that it's
City, mayor, and council.
consistent with
Yeah.
what we have.
Yeah.
So that talks about trustees in one spot too.
So we
Yeah, there
replace
is
the
one of
large
the
one.
trustees. I saw that.
All right. Thank you.
Those are all village labels.
Right,
Yep.
guys.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Take care now.
Have a good night.
Bye. All right.
Any other such matters?
Any other such matters?
Anyone?
Nope.
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 Entertain a
Owen?
motion.
No, he's good.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
6:55.